Hello, everybody. Good morning. It is your hostess, Madam Hellfire, and we're doing a very, very, very special little stream for you guys. I've got two, not one, but two co-hosts. In Nox Archive and Quiet Try. How you guys doing today?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. I don't have the energy to try to actually be a racist right now. So, go ahead, Quiet Try.
I'm good.
So, everybody already knows that Nox and I call ourselves the Undertaker and Kane of the true crime slash horror world, but Quiet Try's channel is literally all about wrestling. So, I figured, why the fuck not bring on another expert to the scene to talk about, yes, horror gimmicks in wrestling. Because why the fuck not? It's fun.
I have a question really quickly.
Okay.
Since it's technically we're talking about big meaty men slapping meat, would it be that meat is covered in maggots because it's horror?
I guess.
What? I had a thought.
A weird question to ask.
I'll just go with it and not argue.
Yeah, we'll just go with it. Let's go with it. He's in a mood this morning.
No, it's worms, apparently, according to the former true assassin.
Ah. Interesting.
Okay, the next time I have a thought, I'm just gonna let it go, okay?
That was a weird thought. That was really out there, my dude. Just so you know, that was way the fuck out there.
At least it wasn't offensive.
This be true. This be very true. So, speaking of the Kane and Undertaker, everybody, when they think about horror gimmicks in wrestling, is gonna think about Kane and Undertaker. So why don't we start off with those two? Let's pop our cherries and get right into it. Do you want to start with the Undertaker since he came first, Noxy Poo?
Yes, because Mark Calloway is, like, an awesome man.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
He does have a podcast, which I listen to religiously, where never mention cucumbers around that man. I'm just saying.
He's deathly afraid of cucumbers, which is actually very hilarious.
But dude got his start in WCW. Well, he got technically his start in like I think what was that one in Texas? World Class Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, WCCW.
But I don't count that because let's face it, that went debunked. He got his ass kicked by Bruiser Brody in his first match.
I mean, it's Bruiser Brody though.
Yeah. But he started in WCW, and then they, for some reason, I can't remember who told him this, but somebody actually told him that nobody's going to pay to see him. So he's like, okay. So he kind of tried to get into the WWE, or WWF at the time, and they didn't really have anything for him. Well, at the same time, Bruce Pritchard was coming up with this idea for a character that's the complete opposite of Brother Love, which is Brother Love being I love you and stuff like that. The complete opposite being death, destruction, and death. So, Vince McMahon takes credit for the creation of The Undertaker, but let's face it, we need to start giving people who actually came up with the ideas the fucking idea.
Yeah, the credit for the idea, yeah. I completely agree with you there.
But a couple of weeks before Survivor Series, when he debuted, he got a call from WWE, from Vince McMahon, asking, is this The Undertaker? And he was like, oh, thank God I'm not coming out of the egg.
If you aren't aware, that's a reference to the gobbledygooker, one of the most idiotic and fucking stupid ideas that Vince McMahon has ever come up with. And Vince McMahon has come up with some very stupid fucking ideas.
Really quickly, I'm just going to point this out because I have researched Vince McMahon in the WWE a lot, but I leave that stuff up to Quiet Try because he's the wrestling person.
Yep.
He's actually, all the good ideas that the WWE come up with, not his ideas.
Nope, they were Jim Cornette's.
Or they were Triple H's idea, or they were Chris Jericho's, or the list goes on. I mean, WrestleMania was literally named by the ring announcer. He came
Are
up
you
with the name
shocked?
WrestleMania.
I am not.
What?
Are you shocked? I am not.
No. Every idea that Vince McMahon has come up with are things like Duke the Dumpster Drosy. But moving on. In 1991, he came into the WWE as this basically dead man who apparently kids were scared of. But I remember the first time I seen him was the 1991 SummerSlam or Survivor Series. I didn't mean to say SummerSlam. And I wasn't scared. I was like, that guy looks cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I actually became a huge fan of The Undertaker from the beginning. And they ended up turning him face in a really weird angle, and it had to deal with Jake the Snake Roberts fucking with the Ultimate Warrior at first. But then the Ultimate Warrior kind of left. So it kind of went into Macho Man Randy Savage. And he turned face by stopping Jake the Snake Roberts from hitting Miss Elizabeth with a chair. And then they did this whole entire thing, because you know how Piper had Piper's Pit?
Mm-hmm.
Well, The Undertaker had the funeral parlor. And
I love it.
The one thing that happened on the funeral parlor was Jake the Snake was asking him, "Are you with me or not?" And which side are you on? And Undertaker took the mic and went, "Not yours." And then got his hand shoved in a casket. Slammed in a casket. So yeah, he's pretty much been everywhere. In the mid-90s, he did the whole entire satanic Undertaker gimmick, which basically meant he was crucifying people.
Gotta love it.
Then he became a biker, which was cool.
American Badass is great.
Yeah, it's
actually
very
Mark
underrated.
Calloway. It's literally just Mark Calloway.
Yeah, it's very underrated.
Yep.
I loved the biker gimmick, because except for the music, because I'm not a real big fan of American Badass by Kid Rock. Of course, I don't like Kid Rock to begin with.
I don't either.
But then came back as the Undertaker proper, the Dead Man Undertaker, when he got buried alive by Kane. And then he was basically that until just before he retired fully, where he basically was Biker Taker for the last time in the Boneyard match.
With AJ Styles, which was fucking choice.
Yeah, my favorite
kiss.
part of that whole entire match was, "Don't bury me! Don't bury me!"
Wait. We can't not talk about the corporate ministry.
Yeah, that too.
We kind of glazed over that. We can't not talk about him trying to get Stephanie Pregnant and putting her on an Undertaker cross.
Yeah, the reason why I to be fair, my brain is ADHD right now, so I completely kind of skipped over that. But yeah, he kind of started setting like a teddy bear on fire, where to Stephanie, the whole entire, hey, we're going to mix these two entities, the Ministry of Darkness and the corporation, into one thing, which had way too many people in it. And I'm like, NWO WWE style.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Kane was a part of it at one point too.
I believe he was.
I think he was in the corporation before then.
It's possible. I know he's in the Authority later, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. We gotta go through Kane's accomplishments. And since we are already on to Kane, we might as well start talking about him, I guess.
I was gonna talk about I forgot the other thing about the Undertaker.
Which is?
The SummerSlam match where he faced himself.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Good lord.
Taker versus Taker.
It's almost as bad as the Kane versus Fake Kane.
Yeah. But at least the
Gallows.
Taker versus Taker had Leslie Nielsen in it.
I was about to say that was probably the best part, was those Leslie Nielsen, the vignettes.
But really quickly, this is the only thing I'm going to say about his championship accomplishments, is he was one-time USWA Unified World Heavyweight Champion, whatever that is, Texas Heavyweight Champion in World Class Championship Wrestling, 4-time WWE Champion, 3-time World Heavyweight Champion, 1-time Hardcore Champion, and 6 times he was the tag team champion.
Damn, son.
And a Royal Rumble winner, and he was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 2022 by Vince McMahon.
Oh, and let's not forget, he had the most infamous, like, title regarding WrestleMania ever, The Streak.
Yes, which should never have been broken, and I will fight anyone for that.
Yeah, it had to be at some point because it was supposed to build somebody, and again, I will give it to them. The notoriety that Brock got out of it was fucking nuts. And Paul Heyman involved in that and his reaction to that, beautiful. Now, the second time he lost with Roman Reigns, scary. Not so much.
Yeah, Brock Lesnar is scary.
Yeah, you could consider that a horror gimmick in its own, but...
Considering how big he is, and how muscular he is, and how he moves... That man defies physics.
He's a genetic fucking freak. And that's putting it lightly.
But then, of course, just to segue to the next one for you, because I'm good at segues sometimes. There was this infamous story of a funeral parlor being set on fire, and The Undertaker having a younger brother, Little Kane.
Kane!
And then we had one of the overly done rivalries of all time.
Yep.
True.
And Kane.
Yep. Kane, a.k.a. Glenn Thomas Jacobs, debuted in the WWE in 1997 at In Your House 14, Revenge of the Taker. Fitting. And when he popped up, he was managed by none other than his illegitimate father, Paul Bearer. Like Knox referenced, his backstory is he is the half-brother of Undertaker, and Undertaker decided he was going to kill him and his family, Kane's family, in a fire by setting ablaze their family funeral home. Now, he was supposed to be severely scarred by this, but that doesn't go over very well later on. So they get into this massive feud that is, again, very overdone. But the start of it was so insane, and it's an iconic moment of Kane showing up. I think it was after a Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah, it was actually during the Hell in a Cell match where Taker was about to beat Shawn Michaels, and then he showed up and ripped the cage door off.
You cannot tell me that was not a choice decision on how to debut him. He was a fucking monster from the jump. Period. After they had their little fight, their brotherly spat, they formed the infamous Brothers of Destruction in September of 1998. Obviously, they've become tag team champions several times because of that. I mean, kind of have to. It's the most dominant, freaky team you'll see in that time period. And eventually, they split up. They go their separate ways, do their own thing. And then comes probably one of the worst storylines that has to be associated with Kane ever, Katie Vick. I would love to know if Triple H regrets every bit of that now. Basically,
He's actually talked about it.
Has he?
Yeah, he actually gave a behind-the-scenes look into it where they actually went into an actual funeral home to film it, and there was a funeral going on in the next room, and and Vince McMahon going, harder, louder.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
So, if you guys aren't aware of what he's talking about, and I'm pretty sure you are because Mystic Shadows is like, no, just no in the chat. It's a phenomenal storyline where Kane falls in love with a girl named Katie Vick. She dies, and Kane, allegedly, decides he's going to commit necrophilia. and sleep with their corpse. And in order to break that to the WWE universe during the Attitude Era, full of shenanigans and fucking grocery and everything that is depraved, it shows Triple H in a funeral parlor getting in a casket with a mannequin in a Kane mask and simulating fucking the mannequin.
Yeah, I was watching the Raw that actually kind of happened on, and when they were going to go to that, I actually switched it to Sports Center, and that should tell you something about me because I am not a huge fan of sports.
Sports ball.
Mhm.
Sports ball. Yeah,
So-
it only gets worse after that, though.
Yeah,
It only gets worse because, like I'd said before, Kane is wearing the mask because he's severely scarred from the fire. As you all know by now, they're not going to be able to come up with how to bring that on once that mask comes off, because it does inevitably come off. And that's because he loses a match to Triple H, which was a bet with Steve Austin, in July of 2003. And the stipulation was if he loses, he has to take his mask off.
and he lost.
And he loses. So I need to find a picture of this because you can't not show this. Like, it is so ridiculous.
I'll say while you're looking for the picture that I honestly think they should have never taken the mask off of him.
I agree.
Not because I think that I don't think it actually helped him in any way. Yeah, it kind of made him a little bit of a monster because afterwards he went on a tyrannical run where he did things like set JR on fire and the whole entire thing he did to Shane McMahon's Little Shanes.
Yeah. So, this is what Kane looked like before this thing. And this, if I can find it, where to go to?
And yes, The Rock did make fun of Kane. My name is Kane.
Yep. There. Oh, we'll just do that. Cancel. Save. Why do you not want to be found?
You want me to look
No.
too?
I have to. It doesn't want to pick up the image on my end. Will this work? Why do you not like me? It doesn't matter. It's fucking dumb. It's just fucking dumb.
I have the picture if you need it.
I have the picture. It just won't pick up the picture on my desktop.
Oh, okay.
It's there. Well, this one.
But
work?
magic. But it's cursed. I get it.
No, it doesn't want to pick it up for some godforsaken reason. I don't know why. I wonder if it'll work if I do this. Sorry, testicle difficulties, y'all.
This is what happens when you do things live.
Yep. Nope. It's not gonna be able. It's not gonna let me pick it up. Whatever.
I can explain it.
It's basically just his face with like ash or like black paint on it.
And half his head is shaved.
Yeah, it's really gross. Oh, I know I can do this. I know I can do this. Hold on. I can do it this way. Do window capture. Not that. That.
Ooh, I remember that.
That. That is what they came up with.
That's not horribly scarred. That is, dude. Why do you look
Dude,
like
what the
you're
fuck?
trying to be? Fucking Rob Van Dam looks like, dude. I didn't know Doink the Clown was gonna be here.
Pretty much.
Mm,
It's fucking
I can't do it.
horrendous.
I can't do an RVD.
As Paul Heyman would say.
Yeah.
It's so bad, though. That is, like, some of the most horrendous work I've seen in wrestling, period. It's so bad.
Yeah, when he unmasked, I was like, well, that was anticlimactic.
Anticlimactic is putting it lightly. Like, very lightly. But, yeah, he goes unmasked. And then, after that, he has another really shitty gimmick. Just before the whole Lita, Matt Hardy, Edge storyline, where he apparently gets her pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
How and why? Vince, what the fuck are you thinking?
This is the same man who wanted to actually do a storyline where Stephanie's child, unborn child, is the actual product of himself, so it doesn't surprise me.
And she's like, fuck no. Well, but what if it's Shane's? No. No. Good on her for that. But back to everything. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, was it Snitsky?
Yeah.
Yep.
That got a little, like, mannequin baby and then punted it to try and piss
Which was
Kane and Lita off.
That was
awesome.
yeah. That was funny.
That's another horrible, probably one of the more horrible, I guess, horror gimmicks. But yeah, that was in 2004 and 2005. They finally decided to do the smart thing and put the mask back on him in 2011. And after that, he has a, thank you God, phenomenal storyline with Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan, with Team Hell No. Those, like, therapy sessions between them and the fake therapist were so fucking funny.
Especially when he's going through every horrible storyline he's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Where he literally says, I had a girlfriend at one time. Her name was Katie.
Oh,
I don't
God.
want to talk about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my, the callback, the callback there was hilarious. Unfortunately, this only lasted like a year. Because then we had the Authority storyline. Where everybody was trying to fuck over Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan. And at this time, he was called Corporate Kane. Where he took the mask off, he put a suit on. He basically is him now, as a mayor. And did their bidding and only put the mask on when they wanted him to absolutely just wreck the shit out of somebody. Which, okay, whatever. I think 2015, or somewhere around that time, is like when he left. And stopped wrestling for WWE. I mean, he pops in every once in a while, but he doesn't do the same thing they used to. And like his brother, his kayfabe brother, he is a Hall of Famer as of 2021. And here are his accolades, all of which are WWF, WWE related. He's a one-time WWF champion. He's a one-time World Heavyweight champion. He's a one-time ECW champion. 2-time Intercontinental champion. 9-time WWF, WWE Tag Team champion. 1-time WCW Tag Team champion. He's a Money in the Bank winner. He was a 1-time Hardcore champ, and he's a 1-time 24/7 champ. Which is, again, one of the gimmicks that he came back for, or the special appearances he came back for. Let's all forget that the 24/7 championship ever existed. The only good thing about it was R-Truth. End of story.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
But that is Kane. We've got another 4 gimmicks to talk about, don't we? Do you want to hop in and do one? Quiet try?
Sure, I can do that. So, much like Nox mentioned earlier, the new generation had the more notorious gimmicks, as Duke the Dumpster Drozy and many others. The one I want to mention is a gimmick that originally it started off as very promising, but then later on when they handled it, it started getting bundled into that group of gimmicks that people don't look fondly on. I want to talk about the early version of Doink the Clown. So the idea was it was going to be a wrestler dressed as a clown to lean into, of course, chlorophobia, the fear of clowns, as we all would have. And I don't know if it's by coincidence, but there's also a novel that had a similar character. I don't know if you guys have heard about it or not.
Pennywise.
But yes, indeed. So the idea was that it was going to be about using mind games to mess with his opponents. Doink, whenever he would make his entrance, would start off as, the happy clown, trying to have fun with everybody, but then eventually would turn that smile completely opposite, and the serious look on his face would come almost immediately. And reveal a layer of a more demented individual behind this goofy look and attire. So when Doink originally debuted, it was different from what others would be, because at that time, they still kind of carried over many years later. They would have vignettes. They would have characters be in a area, like a background or a location that would be fitting with their character. Spend a few weeks figuring out what their motivations are, what they're all about. They bring them onto TV, believe to do some squash matches just to familiarize fans with their moveset, and then eventually they push him to a proper feud with a established name on the roster. However, for Doink, he first appeared in the crowd during random matches that would be taped, and then eventually they would move him to being at the entrance ramp for, I believe it was Superstars, around 93 or 92-ish. He would play pranks or tricks on different superstars. He tripped out on a wire for the Big Boss Man. He threw buckets of water onto other superstars, just to kind of give some examples. And then eventually, when he was setting up his feud with Crush for WrestleMania 9, he attacked Crush with a prosthetic arm that was filled with batteries and lead. So
Crush. I miss Crush.
Yeah, me too. So the wrestler behind that gimmick, Matt Bourne, he was actually a second-generation wrestler. He was a son of Tough Tony Bourne, who I believe was mostly wrestling in the Northwest Territories before then. And you would see how great of a technical wrestler that Matt could be, because he had matches with Bret Hart at SummerSlam 93. I think he substituted Jerry Lawler in place of him. And then he also had a series of matches before then with Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, for a King of the Ring qualifier, I believe it was. And they often go to time limit draws on some of the syndicated shows before I think their final match was on a live Raw in June. But those matches showed you that he was able to find a good balance between having his character work and being able to show off his technical prow. So after that, Matt Bourne would eventually get released from the WWF because of his personal issues at the time. And eventually the Doink character itself, since of course Vince would have the right to it, they eventually put it onto Ray Apollo. And moving forward from 94 is when they started making him into the happy-go-lucky clown, and that's when they brought Doink along with him. And that's when I think most people who weren't a fan of Doink, that's the version of him that most would associate with. So meanwhile, Matt himself would go to ECW and become Born Again. It was a character that was kind of a blend of Matt Bourne and some elements of Doink. Even would have the ring gear, like the full bodysuit, and part of his face would also have the Doink setup. It allowed him to vent his frustrations over how he was treated in the WWF. And I believe also, whenever he won his matches, he would grab the Doink wig and put it over his opponents, and he would just start yelling at them certain comments that you could tell were probably comments that he himself had gotten from Vince or whoever was in charge about the way he was portraying Doink. But eventually, Vince sent him a legal letter telling him not to do that, and Matt felt that he was owed some royalties over the character, so they got all settled and they would move on from that. But I will say that the original version of Doink, that's a character that I admittedly didn't know too much about, but looking back on now and looking at different videos that went into more detail about it, I think that's a more underappreciated gimmick. Because I understand that the later half of Doink, when they was just turning him into another clown, I get that one was not as appealing. It was just more goofiness that you would expect. But the earlier version of Doink, where it's someone who is portraying the clown, but deciding that because they are such a master at being a professional wrestler and being able to get an advantage mentally with their opponents, and just using the clown as another way to get in their heads. I think that whole gimmick is really works well. I don't know if they could work with something like that nowadays or not, but at least for its time, I think the Doink character, I think it's a little underappreciated when it was portrayed by Matt Bourne. So that's
Absolutely.
why that's why I threw him in there as one of my suggestions.
Yeah, Doink is one of my husband's favorite. Like, the two wrestlers that he brings up the most are Ultimate Warrior and Doink. Anything that's wrestling related, he'll come in and go, is Doink involved? No? Then I don't care. And walk away. He fucking loves Doink and Dink. Which makes sense because he's kind of a weirdo, but that's my weirdo.
I think the best moment for Doink would have to be the really bad WrestleMania at Caesar's Palace's parking lot, where they did the whole entire thing of the mirror spot, where he's facing Crush. He beats Crush with help from another Doink. And then they stop in the middle of the ring and start doing this mirror spot and then start laughing. And I'm just sitting here going, that's actually kind of good.
What the fuck is going on, bro? Is literally what it is.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, I like that it basically is showing a very troubled person. And the complete antithesis of what a clown is supposed to be. It's perfect.
Indeed. So you ready for mine?
Go for it.
Yep.
So we've talked about creepy clowns, dead men, the devil's favorite demon. There's a monster that we're missing. And I am not talking about furries.
Blah, blah.
Yeah.
I want to suck your blood.
There have been few frickin' characters in wrestling that have tried the whole entire vampire thing. Kevin Thorne sucked at it. I'm sorry.
It was so bad. And it makes me laugh even more that he was Mordecai.
Yeah. But then you have this guy who was trained by Boris Malenko, who, by the way, ICP named a freaking character after, the Great Malenko. Yes, I used to listen to ICP. No, I am not going to apologize for that. I was a kid. His name is David William Heath, better known to WWE fans as Gangrel. A man who, his entrance was literally him coming up from a ring of fire, holding a goblet in his hands, walk to the ring, take it, put whatever's in the freaking goblet in his mouth, and then spit out red liquid.
Fantastic.
You see,
he's also the one that brought Edge and Christian into the fold and actually started their run with WWE too.
Yes. And the thing is, just like with a lot of other gimmicks, Vince McMahon didn't come up with this. Nope. This was actually David Heath's actual idea. You see, David Heath did a lot of things that were horror related before he came to the WWE. Like, he was in Stampede Wrestling as a member of the Blackhearts with a guy named Tom Nash, who was at the time married to Luna Vachon. Foreshadowing. And, well, he would go all over the place with the whole entire Blackhearts gimmick. His name he was under a mask, and he was called Destruction or Apocalypse, depending on where he was. And, well, when his tag team partner pretty much divorced his wife, Luna Vachon, he ended up marrying Luna Vachon on Halloween of 1994.
That's poetic.
Yep.
Yes. They actually were married, I think, until 2006. I can't remember. 2005, 2006, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But he would, after the whole entire, that probably is the reason why they broke up, but he had this idea, inspired by the movie The Lost Boys. He wanted to play a vampire. So, that's what he did. He tried out for WWE in the 1990s, early 1990s. Didn't really get that far. So he went to ECW for a couple of spells. So he was working in ECW for a bit. Then he went to WCW for like a very small period of time, like a year, before he actually returned to the WWE and started The Brood with Edge and Christian. And The Brood is kind of known for one freaking notorious moment at one notorious WrestleMania moment. It was a Hell in a Cell with The Undertaker versus the Big Boss Man, where they, on cables, flew down to the top of the roof of the Hell in a Cell, opened the top, and dropped a hangman's noose, and they helped hung the freaking Big Boss Man.
Yeah.
He also tried to do this thing called the New Brood, which I'm not going to actually talk about, but he didn't really last that long in WWE. He got let go in 2001, but he continued this gimmick up until the present day, where he's just he's just doing the vampire gimmick, and it works for him. He's actually been in AEW too. That should tell you something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they need to actually fuck with Edge, they bring in Gangrel. I am not joking. They've actually done that multiple times. They've actually brought him back for a 15-man battle royal in WWE. He's done stuff in All Elite Wrestling. He's literally done a lot of things. He's actually directed pornography, too.
That doesn't surprise me one bit.
But now he is a loving father and husband. He's been married 4 times. As I've said, he was married to Luna Vachon for a while. Rest in peace, Luna Vachon.
Mm-hmm.
And his latest marriage, he got married in February of 2022.
Wow.
I know that's a shorter one, but I wanted to get a shorter one because I will talk all day long about The Undertaker.
Yep.
But I have to talk about the man who gave us the term fangin' and bangin'.
Gotta love it.
Yep.
So, do we want to talk about, like, I think he's, like, the predecessor of all the blonde baddies, creepy guys.
I mean, look at him. Doesn't he look like you don't want to beat him in a dark alley?
That's true, but there's another one that I'm talking about that, I know Quiet would like to talk about. So why don't we talk about Kevin Sullivan?
Ooh.
Yes.
This freak
So-
is away.
Yeah, I was about to say. Originally, if Hellfire, I can mention this. We were originally going to do this stream sometime last month,
Yeah.
and just because the live stuff got in the way, we had to push it back a little bit. I believe if the dates are right in my head, I believe that the stream would have taken place, I think, just a couple days after Kevin had passed, or the news about him passing just came out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's even more of a reason to mention his time, because he's definitely been involved creatively in some of the most, he's been involved with some great angles, you know, because for every NWO, and as we're going to talk about the Prince of Darkness, there's also, unfortunately, a Dungeon of Doom, although that might just be more of a
the Legion
Hogan
of Doom,
related-
Dungeon of Doom. Good lord.
I was about to say, yeah, that might be more of a brother issue, but, you know, he is a
I have to say this really quickly, if I may, about the Dungeon of Doom. I will say this.
ahead.
I
Okay.
will rest my laurels on this. I found it entertaining because I thought it was funny as hell.
Really?
I found it amusing. I didn't find it scary. I thought, this is just overly acted and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, to get back to Mr. Sullivan, so back in 1982, Kevin, he previously wrestled down in Florida, but he returned to the territory, and there was a storyline where later on he was revealed to have paid Jake Roberts about $1,000 to break Barry Windham's bones, and that would kickstart him being the Prince of Darkness, as that gimmick was inspired by the occult and, at the time, the public fear of satanic panic. Kevin would, for interviews, he would start painting an X on his forehead, as Charles Manson did, and in his promos would mention about him visiting ancient temples and then listening to dark forces. So along the way, he would also build his own, have his own stable, the Army of Darkness. and that had elements of Lovecraftian horror within it. Originally, it was just Sullivan and then Roberts for a little while. He would end up in a feud with Dusty Rhodes. The two would end up having a cage match. I believe the loser would have to leave the territory for 60 days if they weren't able to win. And Jake ended up helping them out. I believe it was because Jake dressed up as Santa Claus to help out, which was odd.
Weird.
Eventually, the two faced off again later under masked gimmicks, as I believe Dusty was the Midnight Rider and Kevin as Lucifer. And eventually, Kevin would also have more of a stable when he worked in International Championship Wrestling. I believe it was based out of Boston. More members of this group included Mark Lewin as Purple Haze. They had Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler Bob Roop there. They had Luna Vachon. And then they had Winona Littleheart, who had the nickname of the Lock because her gimmick was that she was being kept under lock and key when she and Luna would team up as the Daughter of Darkness. And then their valet at the time was known as the Fallen Angel, that we would better know as Nancy Sullivan. So eventually we passed through, just kind of skimming over, by the end of the decade, the Satanic Panic started kind of weighing off a little bit. I believe it still had some coverage, but it wasn't as big as it had been earlier in the 80s. And by that point, Kevin moved on from the Prince of Darkness gimmick, and I believe he started going to Jim Crockett Promotions and started doing the Varsity Club. And then, of course, as we talked about, would, in a way, bring back the Army of Darkness, but that was something completely different. But I think just for a gimmick that was quite out there at the time, and this was before, we had stuff like The Undertaker and Kane that really leaned into horror elements. I definitely think the Prince of Darkness gimmick was more out there as far as, like, gimmicks in the territories. And it's definitely something that should be remembered fondly about Kevin Sullivan and his legacy in the business.
There's an interesting true crime connection to Kevin Sullivan.
Ah.
Well, you see, when Chris Benoit passed away, killed his wife and son. God damn it. Killed his wife, his son, and himself. There was a YouTube video that was posted by this one person who claimed that Benoit was innocent, and the person that actually did it was Kevin Sullivan due to the fact of this actual gimmick you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Which is completely false.
Wasn't she married to him at some point?
Yeah, she was.
And she was Woman, I think it was what the gimmick was called.
Woman, yep.
And she ended up dating Benoit, and yeah.
Well, Kevin, that's the infamous thing with Kevin, is when he and Chris feuded in WCW, that was the phrase about Kevin booked his own divorce. Yep. Since they had them paired together, and eventually that became a shoot.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting is Kevin Sullivan brought us Luna Vachon.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So this man should be remembered for everything that he's done for the business, yes, but at the same time, I just remembered that YouTube video, and when you were actually talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember somebody actually tried to pin Benoit's crimes on somebody who obviously had nothing to do with it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because people be cray-cray.
And for the dumbest reasons. And I will never escape the Satanic Panic.
You will be dealing with it forever. Yep. Okay, go on and continue, Quiet Trey. I'm sorry, we had a side tangent.
No. That was pretty much all the notes I had for Kevin, so I'm good.
Sweet. So we're gonna close this one out with probably one of the first that I know of mainstream international horror icons by the name of Abdullah the Butcher. Yes, he is eating raw organs. In that picture.
Oh.
Yeah, that's part of why he was a horror gimmick. Real name, Lawrence Robert Shreve. He debuted in a Montreal wrestling promotion at the age of 17 in 1958. I remember in the Dark Side of the Ring episode, he said that he'd started wrestling because he was a big dude. And he was tired of working all of these little shit jobs to try and make money for his big family and for his mom. So he decided to do this, and after a few gimmicks that didn't work out, he settled on Abdullah the Butcher, which is basically this evil Arabian sadist who doesn't speak English, that goes around the world and freaks people out with eating raw innards of animals, not people. And basically having some of the bloodiest matches you'll ever see. And evidence of that is, if you see those lions on his head, yeah, that's from blading. Blading is when somebody or a wrestler would take a razor blade that they have hidden in either their hand or some tape around their hand and cutting part of their head for the effect of being blood. A lot of different wrestlers have used it, even to this day, which we see you. It's not how it is back then, where we're not going to see it as easily. Botchamania's proved that one. Yes, and stabbing people in the head with forks. And using pizza cutters, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And hitting them hard way with chairs. His matches were just so incredibly violent that everybody wanted to see him. And by everybody, I mean everybody. When I go through the list of his fucking titles alone, thank you very much for being a member for 21 months. That's almost 2 years, Pigeon. And he says, slicey, 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 slicey.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I've turned on TTS for donations. If you decide to do that,
nice.
you will. It's not Brian, and it's not the one that Nox has. It's somebody different. It's a different
It's not
voice.
Emma?
No. It is a different voice. It is a male voice, but it's a different voice. I figured I'd try that out and see if that works at some point.
Is it Hugh Laurie?
No.
It should be.
I don't think that's an option.
I wish it was.
I know. But he was basically just this Arabian sadistic animal. No, it's not Abraxas. That's not an option. I wish. That would be fucking awesome, but no. It's not an option in the Streamlabs TTS. But he would have these matches, and he would have managers that would speak for him. Because he's not supposed to speak English. He's Arabian. He's not supposed to speak or understand English. So he's had a myriad of managers throughout his years. And keep in mind, he was wrestling from 1958 to 2010. That's like 60 years. There's a lot of managers. These managers would include, here's all of them, Gary Hart, Paul Jones, Eddie Creechman, Black Baron, The Grand Wizard, no, not from the KKK, J.J. Dillon, Damian Kane, Larry Sharp, Hugo Savinovich, Chicky Star, which is probably the funniest name I've heard, Oliver Humperdinck, if you guys watched Princess Bride with me earlier, a couple weeks ago, you get why that's funny too, Buddy Colt, George Cannon, Bearcat Wright, Big Bad John, Tony Montana, Gentleman Jim Holiday, and Rock Hunter. And he was so, wanted. He was traveling the world for NWA, for Japan, Canada. He was even in, I think, Puerto Rico and New Zealand at some point. It's ridiculous the amount of places that he popped up in. Just because people wanted to see him do this gimmick of freaking you out with eating innards and having these gruesome matches. Even in it was so bad to a point, I think I remember, that he would just look at a crowd and they would just scatter. They were so terrified of this man. Justifiably so. He's a big dude and he's got scars all over him and he's eating raw food and brutalizing people. why wouldn't you be fucking terrified?
He was ECW before ECW.
Yes, we'll
True.
get to that. We'll get to that. Because he was in ECW at one point. He first arrived at the big mainstream with WCCW in 1986. He then would show up in WCW in an infamous gimmick where he was a birthday gift to Sting from Cactus Jack. What a jerk. That is one hell of a gift, for damn sure. He would pop in ECW in 1993. He'd pop up in Ring of Honor in 2002, which I didn't even know about. One of his final matches was in NJPW, and his very last match, in where he stayed within wrestling for a while as like a coach, was GCW. Yes, that GCW. His final match took place on October 9th, 2010. And after a year of doing stuff with GCW, he was then entered into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2011. One of his biggest controversies was, I think it was one of his later matches, where he cut himself and he cut his opponent. And in that match, some of his blood went into the wound of the other person. And around that time, I don't remember the name of the guy, but around the time, actually, I should look at this. I should look this up.
I think it was Hannibal was his name.
I think
Yeah,
so.
Hannibal.
Hannibal, yeah. Around that time, he
Which
contracted,
I have something to say about him.
I think it was hepatitis?
Yeah, he had hepatitis.
Yeah.
He contracted hepatitis, and therefore got really, really sick. And the only person that could have possibly given it to him was Abdullah. You can imagine the amount of legal trouble that caused for him, to the point where he is, at the moment, very much bankrupt. He still can't pay back the medical bills for that to Hannibal, to this day. What did you have to say about this, Knox?
For one thing, while Hannibal was successful in this whole entire thing, the only reason he was successful in it was because, according to Abby, as Abdullah the Butcher is known as, he didn't get the whole entire frickin' letter saying he has to go to court until later, and apparently he can't read, which I don't believe either of those things, but he never showed up to court.
Yeah.
Second, Hannibal has proven in the years to be the biggest piece of shit out there, because of this whole entire thing that happened a couple years ago, where he had this mask gimmick called the Blood Hunter. Now, he was in a match, and I can't remember who he was facing, and he decided in this match to take the referee and just start pretty much cutting him open with a frickin' spike, to the point where that man had to go to the hospital.
Yep.
And this was one of those types of referees that gets paid per appearance, and he will do anything to get on the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what Hannibal did to him, he later on sit there. I've seen pictures of what the dude's head looks like. Imagine Abby's fucking head, but it's open wounds.
Yeah, he almost
All
killed
of
the
it.
guy. He almost killed him.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna say this: as much as I think Abdullah the Butcher kind of, shouldn't have done the whole entire freaking match with him with Hannibal to begin with, because Hannibal sucks, and I feel sorry for him for everything that he's going through. Hannibal has proven, to me at least, that he is the biggest piece of shit out there, and I hope no one ever books him in anything and he has to go work at a Burger King or something.
The last thing I saw him in was in the episode of Dark Side of the Ring for Abdullah. It's the last thing I've seen of him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was douchey in that.
He was. But I will give him that he did say he did not want to be cut. Very blatantly. And obviously Abdullah did it anyways. and there's no way to get around that it had to be Abdullah that gave it to him.
Exactly, and I feel sorry for him for that, but that's the only thing I ever feel sorry for him about.
Yep. Everything else he rightfully deserves. But yeah, Pidgey says it's hepatitis C, and the legal troubles for this was so bad that he had to sell his Hall of Fame ring. From what I understand, the story with him missing the court hearing, I do believe him when he says that he couldn't read, because he dropped out of school at a very early age. From all accounts. I mean, he started wrestling when he was 17, and he was working odd jobs since he was like 9 or 10. So I think that it makes sense he couldn't read. And his caretaker at the time, and probably still is caretaker, found that letter long after, when she was going through a big ass pile of letters that was sitting on, I think, a dining room table. I could be wrong. I'm trying to recall what I remember the details were from that Dark Side of the Ring episode. And then they found out about it. Now, whether or not you want to believe him is up to you, but it makes sense if the whole entirety of the story is to be believed. It makes sense that he doesn't know how to read. You won't need to. People are talking for you. And he didn't seem like a very eloquent guy to begin with.
And yet somehow he had his own freaking restaurant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which didn't last. But while we were getting ready for this, I was going through the list of his accolades through his 60 years of wrestling. And it's a long list, so let me just get it out of the way. He's a one-time NWA International Tag Team Champ, one-time NWA United National Champ, one-time PWF US Heavyweight Champ, one-time PWF World Heavyweight Champ, one-time Big Japan Pro Deathmatch Heavyweight Champ. That was one of the weird ones I was mentioning off stream. Weird names. Two-time NWA Central States Tag Champ. Keep in mind, you're going to see a bunch of different NWA ones because, remember, it was territory time at this period of wrestling culture. One-time NWA Georgia Heavyweight Champ. One-time NWA Georgia TV Champ. One-time NWA Mackin Heavyweight Champ. I don't know what the fuck that means. Three-time IWA International Heavyweight Champ. One-time Canadian International Heavyweight Champ. Two-time MWWF Heavyweight Champ. Three-time NWA Vancouver, Canada Tag Team Champ. One-time NWA Detroit US Heavyweight Champ. One-time NWA Detroit Tag Team Champ. One-time NWA New Zealand British Commonwealth Champ. Another weird one, really long. One-time NWA Texas Hardcore Champ. Two-time National Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champ. One-time NWF International Champ. One-time NWA Calgary, Canada Heavyweight Champ. Six-time Stampede North American Heavyweight Champ. One-time Tokyo Pro Wrestling Tag Team Champ. One-time Trinidad and Tobago Heavyweight Champ. One-time WCCA Brass Knuckles Champ. Two-time World Wrestling Council Caribbean Heavyweight Champ. One-time WWC Hardcore Champ. Two-time WWC North American Heavyweight Champ. Three-time WWC Puerto Rico Heavyweight Champ. Three-time WWC International Heavyweight Champ. And one-time WWC World Heavyweight Champ. That's a lot of titles.
And I'm wondering how many of those are fake titles that just to pad a record, because they do that a lot in wrestling. I meant to say wrestling.
I don't think so, because he was known for traveling a shit ton. And people wanted to push him because his gimmick worked so well.
Yeah.
So I'm more inclined to believe that that's probably correct.
Probably.
But yeah, he's nuts. And he wears, kind of like New Jack, he wears the scars of all the shit that he's done.
Rest in peace, New Jack.
Yes and no. New Jack was also an asshole.
Yes, but he was one of those assholes that... It actually depended. Did he have cocaine or not?
I mean, he almost killed the guy by throwing him off a really high height into a bunch of tables that he fucking missed.
Oh, I know. I just wanted to be a dork.
You are a dork. You don't have to try.
I
But
know.
That's the 6 people we had in mind for this iteration of Ghastly Grap Gimmicks, I'll call it.
It's a lot of fun. I love talking about wrestling. I don't get to do it very often. So getting to do something that's related to the horror side of things with wrestling is fucking fun. Period.
Oh, I forgot to mention something funny.
Okay.
Because of the influence of The Undertaker and how The Undertaker was awesome throughout his whole entire career, Damian Priest got an unfortunate nickname when he won the World
Bisexual
Heavyweight
Undertaker?
title.
Yep.
The Bisexual Undertaker.
They call, what's her name? Stephanie... One of the new people
Valkyra?
that... What was that?
I think it's Valkyra. I don't know how to say it.
One of the new talents that's coming to NXT. They call her the lesbian Kane.
Oh, Jesus. But the reason why I mentioned that is because in an interview Damian Priest did, that got mentioned, and he just kind of rolled his eyes. He's like, and laughed, and was like, I don't know where it came from, but Rhea Ripley keeps sending me it.
She loves that shit. They've asked her, Stephanie Vacker. There you go. Thank you, Pidgey. But it's really fitting. It's hilarious. It is so hilarious.
That's why Damian Priest is my bisexual Undertaker.
He's everybody's bisexual Undertaker.
Amen.
Yes.
Fucking men. I love the Terror Twins.
Which is technically like the Brothers of Its Destruction, only
Mixed
intergender.
tags. Yeah, mixed tag. They really need to put Rhea in more intergender matches, because the one with Tozawa was hilarious. But I love talking about this stuff. I don't get to on this channel because it doesn't really fit most of the time, but there are so many other horror gimmicks that could be talked about. We would be here all day. So with that in mind, if you guys would like to see another one of these where we talk about, oh, I don't know, Jake the Snake Roberts, the Boogeyman, Raven, bunch of other gimmicks that we could quite possibly talk about, let me know. I would love to have these two back to talk about this, and maybe somebody else who's also a huge fanatic of wrestling, maybe Pidgey, I don't know, it's up to him. But that would be a lot of fun. And thank you guys for coming on. I really do appreciate it. It's great to talk about this. Yes, Bray Wyatt. Absolutely. Thank you guys for coming on. Would you like to plug your stuff?
I have a birthday stream tomorrow.
Oh,
Yes.
you
It'll
poor
be
baby.
It'd be a fun time, Knox. You'll get through it.
You poor, poor furry baby.
I'm not a furry when it comes to that. I'm an avocado.
Mm-hmm.
You're a furry avocado.
So this is basically how it came about. I think it was, I can't remember which one of us brought it up, either me or Ray. And all of a sudden everybody's like, birthday stream. So,
Just
birthday
shut up
stream
and let
for me.
everybody love you, Knox.
I don't wanna.
Yes, you do. Shut up.
Mm.
Shut up.
I
You
just
got
want
anything?
to take in my walker.
You got anything you want to plug, Quiet Try? Is there any other? I know you put a video out recently, but is there anything you're working on that you want to plug?
Yes. So I'm hoping this week it will be finished, but I'm working on a video. Talk about it's one of the strangest wrestling connected things I've reviewed or talked about for a video. So imagine territory wrestlers competing under Kellogg themed names in a Kellogg sales meeting. That's literally an entire premise for a show that existed and that was uploaded onto the network years ago. The Battle of the Breakfast Cereals. That's one we'll be covering next on the channel, and yeah, it's as odd as it sounds, but it's probably into the territory of so bad it can be good. So,
Huh.
yeah, like I said, hopefully the video will be out this coming week, and then I think you'll start to understand a little bit why I kind of have to be vague, because I don't think you could believe most of what I said without seeing it for yourself.
Oh, I can believe it. I can believe
smell
it. They had
toast.
Dolph Ziggler dressing up as the Colonel for KFC. They
I-
definitely do.
I actually referenced that in my video too. So yeah, it's definitely it's interesting, just to put it lightly.
But yeah, like I said, guys, go check out these two. I have links for them in the description for the stream. Go sub if you aren't already sub, but I'm pretty sure you already are to at least Nox. Go sub to Quiet Try, please. And if you want to see more of these, you want to see us do this again, do a repeat, please let me know in either the comments or in my Discord server. That would be great. Thank you guys for coming out. I very much appreciate it. And until next time, sweet nightmares.
Bite me one time. Bite me twice. Oh, ah, that's rather nice. Frankenstein, freaks and grudge. Scream out loud, you're out of luck. Crime so beastly, can't get enough. Ooh, it's all side. Psychotic love. I start to turn when all the streets are moonlit. I suck 'em dry and rip off all the skin bits. 'Cause freaky horror films, I'll always be a fan. From Nosferatu right up to Train to Busan. And what a beautiful werewolf queen we have inside it, to slice a path of hell with a foul death beside it. Spooky sounds, blood and brains, hunted down by the insane. Crime so beastly, can't get enough. Ooh, it's all side. Psychotic love.